Start? Okay. Good evening, friends. My name is Vinay Lal, and I'm professor of history and Asian American Studies, as many of you know, at UCLA. So I'm completing 31 years on this campus, and right now I'm standing outside Dixon Plaza, as it's called. So, as many of you are aware, last evening and this morning, there has been enormous activity on this campus. I'm putting it in an anodyne sense. Let me explain what happened on this campus. So I was at this campus until about 12:40 a.m. this morning. And in a different video, I'm going to share some images of that. It was a very different experience being here at that time because there were about perhaps 500, 800 students over here. And then on the other side, the other side of the plaza over there would have been another maybe 500 or 1,000 students over there. Right? And there was an encampment there. It was called the Palestine Solidarity Encampment. And the UCLA police, assisted by the LAPD, the Los Angeles Police Department, and the CHP, the California Highway Patrol. There must have been about 150 to 200 police officers. They came in sometime around 1:50 a.m. and sometime around 2:30 a.m. they started forcibly removing the encampment. So now let me put it very bluntly what happened. This Palestine Solidarity Encampment was an initiative of the students who are protesting the war in Gaza and the genocide, ethnic cleansing, collective punishment, whatever one wishes to term it. You can see that there's a pro-Israeli who's now feeling very comfortable. They essentially have taken over the campus, and if you look here at Dixon Plaza, you won't see a single student, even though this is a university, because essentially it has now become a garrison state, a police state. That's what we're really speaking about here. Now, I will be doing a number of other videos where I'm going to try to explain in some detail what has been transpiring on university campuses and the nature of the conflict in Palestine. But at this point, it is necessary to say a few things. 36 hours ago, when the encampment was still in place, a large group of outside instigators, as they are described sometimes they're described as counter-protesters. It's certainly clear that the vast majority of them were outsiders. There may have been a few Zionist students, we're not quite sure. They came here at a few minutes before 11 p.m. and violently attacked the students and the faculty in the encampment. Now, the University of California police force was there. They did absolutely nothing, and it wasn't until about 1 a.m., so 2 hours later, that the Chancellor of the University, Block, I want you to remember this name, because I think his name will live in infamy, as it should, right? That he essentially then called the mayor of Los Angeles and asked for assistance in trying to quell this violence. And it wasn't until 3 a.m. that the LAPD actually really moved in. So 4 hours, the students who were engaged in a principled, non-violent protest were left to fend for themselves. There were fireworks thrown into this encampment. Some of the protesters, you can see this footage. It's on the internet, of course. Some of them were violently beating up these people. They brought sticks with them, okay, and brickbats. And I want to reinforce, the police did nothing for 4 hours. And it is very clear, as I'm going to explain in a few minutes, that the chancellor of this university, in fact, actually threw the dog whistle at them. He has been throwing the dog whistle at white supremacists, at Islamophobes, right, and Zionists for a very long period of time. And certainly since the early days of October, after Hamas's attack on Israel on October 7th, right? But we'll get to that in just a few moments, right? Because now I want to establish a contrast between the inaction of the police when they should have been there to protect the students and what happened last night or early this morning when the police did come in when they shouldn't have. Because there's an encampment there. It's essentially an encampment of non-violent student protesters, right? And now they brought in 200 armed police. And the footage is really quite horrific, because what we're really talking about now is the transformation of this campus into an authoritarian garrison state, right? That's essentially what transpired in the early hours of this morning and last night. Now I want to go back just for a few moments before concluding my short talk here, because as I said, I will be doing a series of other talks as well. But what I do want to say is this, that if we look at what Chancellor Block has done, so it was a few days after October 7th that he released his first public statement. He showed himself absolutely incapable of naming the Palestinians, because it's no surprise to anyone who knows Block that he has always despised the Palestinians and the Muslims as a group of people. And you have to be neither Jewish nor Muslim to believe that. You just have to look at the record. It's available there. And you have to look at the dog whistles that he's been throwing constantly at the white supremacists and the Islamophobes, who of course then had a field day yesterday. And clearly are having a field day today. That's quite transparent, as you can see from the fact that now they feel really emboldened. They think that this is their campus. They own it, right? We won't get into the various reasons why Chancellor Block thinks that way. We won't get into all the reasons about how he is beholden to obviously donors, large number of whom, of course, are Jewish. There's a long history of all of these things, but the critical thing is that in subsequent announcements, we find the same problem. Not a shred of sympathy, not an iota of sympathy for the Palestinians, absolutely unable to mention them even by name. And what you got from the Chancellor was a series of anodyne, bland, in fact, I would say asinine statements. And so this will be certainly something to look into. I'm very proud to say that the members of the history faculty, of which I'm a member, have overwhelmingly passed a resolution, informal resolution. We have issued a letter holding Block accountable, calling for his resignation and calling for an investigation into not simply the events, but an investigation into this university's inability to actually protect its own students, unwillingness to protect its own students. And that's the most astonishing thing. Every statement he's released, he speaks in these anodyne terms about the UCLA community, the Bruin community, we're one family. But what he did was he threw several hundred students of this family that he calls his own to the wolves. And we should remember that.